The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Westfield Conservatory of Music as Sophia Chen clutched her acceptance letter tightly in her hand. Her heart raced as she stood at the entrance of the imposing stone building, taking in the moment she had dreamed about since she was 8 years old. Around her, other students hurried past with instrument cases and confident strides, while Sophia remained frozen, both terrified and thrilled. At 19, Sophia had come farther than anyone from her small town expected. Growing up in a modest home where her parents ran a small Chinese restaurant, music had been her escape and her passion. Her mother had scraped together enough for piano lessons with Mrs. Wilson, the only piano teacher in town, who recognized something special in Sophia's playing from the very beginning. "You're going to be late on your first day if you keep standing there," a friendly voice called out. Sophia turned to see a girl with bright copper hair and a cello case strapped to her back. "Is it that obvious I'm new?" Sophia asked with a nervous laugh. "Only because you look as terrified as I felt last year," the girl said, extending her hand. "I'm Lily, second-year cello. Sophia, first-year piano." She shook Lily's hand, grateful for the kindness. "Piano program? Brave soul. That's where all the sharks circle." Lily glanced at her watch. "Come on, I'll show you to the main hall. Orientation starts in 10 minutes. As they walked through the grand corridors, Sophia tried not to gawk at the oil paintings of famous composers and the glass display cases filled with ancient instruments. Students filled the hallways, some practicing scales under their breath, others huddled in corners discussing musical theory with intense expressions. "This place is something else," Sophia whispered. "Wait until you hear everyone play," Lily said. "It's humbling and inspiring at the same time, though some people here think being good gives them the right to be jerks." Before Sophia could ask what she meant, they entered the main hall, a magnificent room with a domed ceiling painted with scenes of mythological figures celebrating music. Rows of chairs faced a stage where a grand piano gleamed under the spotlights. "There's a seat over there," Lily pointed. "I need to find my roommate." "Good luck, Sophia. Find me in the cafeteria later if you want." Left alone, Sophia squeezed into a row of chairs, accidentally bumping into a boy with perfectly styled dark hair, who gave her an annoyed glance before returning to his conversation. She mumbled an apology he didn't acknowledge. The dean of the conservatory, a tall woman with silver hair pulled into a severe bun, stepped onto the stage and welcomed the new students. She spoke about the prestigious history of Westfield, the rigorous expectations and the brilliant careers of its graduates. Sophia listened intently, imagining herself among those success stories someday. After orientation, students broke into program groups. The piano students were directed to a smaller recital hall, where they would meet their instructors and participate in their first master class. Sophia followed the crowd, her stomach knotting with nerves. The piano department head, Professor Eleanor Hayes, was a legend in the classical music world. In her 60s now, she had once been a celebrated concert pianist, known for her interpretations of Chopin and Debussy. Her critical eye was famous, or infamous depending on who you asked. "Welcome to the most competitive program at Westfield," Professor Hayes began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. "Look around you. 32 pianists sit in this room. By graduation, perhaps 8 of you will have what it takes to make careers as soloists." A heavy silence fell over the group. Professor Hayes continued, "Today we'll have a small demonstration. I'd like to hear what you bring to the table. Who would like to play first?" No one moved. Then a hand shot up confidently from the front row. It belonged to the boy with the styled dark hair who had ignored Sophia earlier. "Ah, Mr. Reed, I've heard much about you. Please, show us what you can do." Professor Hayes gestured toward the Steinway Concert Grand. The boy approached the piano with the ease of someone who had performed countless times. He sat, adjusted the bench with practiced precision, and launched into Liszt's La Campanella without sheet music. His technique was flawless. His fingers flew across the keys at breathtaking speed, hitting every note with precision. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Sophia clapped too, genuinely impressed and slightly intimidated. "Excellent technique, Mr. Reed." Professor Hayes nodded approvingly. "Though I'd like to hear more of your personal voice in the interpretation next time." Still, very promising. The boy, whose name Sophia now knew was Reed, gave a practiced smile and returned to his seat, accepting compliments from those around him. Now, who else would like to share? Professor Hayes scanned the room. Sophia had prepared Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece she felt connected to deeply. Despite her nervousness, she slowly raised her hand. "Yes, you there. Your name?" "Sophia Chen, Professor." "Well, Miss Chen, let's hear what you've brought." Walking to the piano felt like moving through water. Sophia sat down, took a deep breath, and began to play. She forgot about the audience, forgot about Reed's technical brilliance, and simply played the way the music made her feel, with all the longing and hope the nocturne stirred in her. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before polite applause followed. It wasn't the enthusiastic response Reed had received, but Professor Hayes was nodding thoughtfully. "Interesting interpretation, Ms. Chen. A bit unorthodox in the rubato, but there's something genuine there. Your technical foundation needs work. The arpeggios in the middle section were uneven, but there's feeling in your playing." Sophia nodded, grateful for the feedback that was more positive than she had expected. As she stood to return to her seat, a loud scoff came from the front row. "Something to add, Mr. Reed?" Professor Hayes raised an eyebrow. Reed straightened in his chair. "I just think it's interesting how some people get admitted playing at that level. That interpretation wasn't unorthodox, it was provincial. It sounded like something you'd hear at a small-town recital, not a conservatory." The room went quiet. Sophia felt her face burn as she quickly walked back to her seat, eyes fixed on the floor. Professor Hayes frowned slightly. "We all bring different backgrounds to our music, Mr. Reed. Sometimes fresh perspectives are valuable. Now who's next?" The rest of the master class passed in a blur for Sophia. More students played, some brilliantly, others nervously. Professor Hayes gave critiques and occasional praise. All Sophia could think about was Reed's dismissive comment, and the snickers it had provoked from some of the other students. After class, Sophia hurried toward the exit, wanting nothing more than to retreat to her small dormitory room. As she passed through the doorway, she found Reed leaning against the wall, surrounded by an admiring group of students. "Honestly, these scholarship cases bring down the program standards," he was saying as she walked by. "My father says the board only admits them to look inclusive in the brochures." Sophia kept walking, pretending not to hear, but Reed called out, "Hey, small-town girl." She stopped, reluctantly turning to face him. "Word of advice," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Maybe consider music education instead. Not everyone is cut out for performance." A girl beside him laughed. "Julian, don't be mean," so his first name was Julian. Julian Reed, Sophia committed it to memory. "I'm not being mean, I'm being honest," Julian replied. "Conservatory isn't like your local piano competitions where they give everyone a participation trophy." Sophia wanted to respond, to defend herself, but words failed her. Instead, she turned and walked away, Julian's laughter echoing behind her. In her tiny dorm room, Sophia sat on the bed and finally let the tears come. She had expected the conservatory to be challenging, but not cruel. She pulled out her phone and nearly called her parents, but stopped herself. They had been so proud when she received her scholarship, telling everyone in their small community about their daughter's achievement. Her father had even closed the restaurant early the day she left, something he never did to drive her to the airport. She couldn't let them know she was already struggling on day one. Instead, she wiped her tears and pulled out her sheet music. Julian Reed might have more training, more connections, and more confidence, but Sophia had something else, the pure love of music that had sustained her through years of practicing on an old upright piano in the back of her parents' restaurant. After closing time, she ran her fingers over the worn pages of her favorite Chopin pieces, remembering Mrs. Wilson's words. "Technique can be taught, but heart comes from within. Never lose your heart, Sophia." Tomorrow would be another day at Westfield. She would face Julian Reed and the others again. She would feel inadequate and out of place again, but she would also sit at a piano again. And when her fingers touched those keys, nothing else would matter. That night, as her roommate snored softly in the bed across the room, Sophia made a promise to herself. She would prove Julian Reed wrong. Somehow, someday, she would make him and everyone else at Westfield Conservatory recognize her talent, not despite her background, but because of the unique perspective it gave her music. She just had no idea yet how completely that moment would silence them all. The weeks that followed at Westfield Conservatory were a blur of classes, practice sessions, and sleepless nights for Sophia. Each morning she woke before her roommate to secure a practice room. often arriving when the building was still dark and the hallways empty. Each night she stayed until security politely asked her to leave, her fingers cramping and her back aching from hours at the piano. Despite her efforts, Sophia felt like she was barely treading water. Theory classes moved at lightning speed, with professors referencing concepts she had never heard of in her small-town lessons. In performance classes, other students played pieces she had only dreamed of attempting, their fingers dancing effortlessly through passages that would take her months to master. And then there was Julian Reed, who seemed to take special pleasure in highlighting the gap between them. "You're holding your wrist too high again," he commented one afternoon as he passed her practice room. Sophia had left the door slightly ajar to let in fresh air, and Julian had been walking by with his usual entourage. "It's a basic technique issue. Didn't they teach you that in—" He paused dramatically. "Wherever you're from?" His friend snickered as they continued down the hall. Sophia lowered her wrists, hating that he was right, hating even more that she had adjusted her playing based on his criticism. Lily, the cellist who had befriended Sophia on that first day, became her lifeline. They met for coffee most mornings, with Lily offering encouragement and insider tips about surviving Westfield. "Julian does this to someone every year," Lily explained as they sat in the campus cafe, steam rising from their mugs. "Last year it was a violinist from rural Idaho. The year before, a flutist from some small town in Maine. He picks someone he sees as an outsider and makes them his target." "Lucky me," Sophia said, stirring her coffee absently. "The thing is," Lily leaned closer, "he only bothers with people he sees as a threat." Sophia nearly choked on her drink. "A threat, me? That's ridiculous, is it?" Lily raised an eyebrow. "Professor Hayes mentioned your playing in her advanced interpretation seminar last week. Said you had remarkable emotional intelligence in your approach to Chopin." "She did?" Sophia couldn't hide her surprise. Professor Hayes hardly acknowledged her in class. Julian's technically perfect and everyone knows it. But technical perfection isn't what makes people remember a performance. Lily tapped her fingers on the table thoughtfully. "You have something he can't practice his way into having." Whatever Professor Hayes might have said in private, her public feedback to Sophia remained coolly critical. "More precision in the left hand, Miss Chen. Watch your dynamics here, Ms. Chen. This passage lacks clarity, Ms. Chen." Sophia absorbed each criticism, working twice as hard to address every point. Slowly, incrementally, she began to improve. Her theory grades climbed from barely passing to respectable. Her technique grew more refined without losing the emotional quality that made her playing distinctive. October arrived, bringing with it midterm juries, the first major performance evaluation of the semester. Students would play before a panel of faculty members who would determine if they were progressing adequately in the program. 2 days before the juries, Professor Hayes made an announcement that sent a ripple of excitement through the piano department. "The conservatory has been offered an extraordinary opportunity," she said, her normally stern face showing a hint of enthusiasm. "A benefactor has arranged for one Westfield student to perform as a soloist with the National Symphony Orchestra at their spring showcase at Carnegie Hall." The room erupted in whispers. Carnegie Hall was the dream venue for any classical musician. To play there as a student with a professional orchestra was unheard of. "A competition will be held in January to select this student," Professor Hayes continued. "Any performance major may apply, but candidates must be nominated by their department head." Her gaze swept across the room. "I will be nominating only our most promising pianists, so consider your jury performances as auditions for this opportunity as well." Sophia felt a flutter of excitement that she quickly suppressed. There was no way Professor Hayes would nominate her, not when there were third and fourth year students with far more experience and polish. Not when there was Julian Reed, who was already being courted by recording labels according to conservatory gossip. As students filed out of the hall buzzing with excitement, Julian's voice cut through the chatter. "I wonder why they're even bothering with a competition," he said loudly enough for those around him to hear. "We all know who's going to win." His friends nodded in agreement, several of them glancing at Sophia as she passed. One girl whispered something that made the others laugh. Sophia kept her eyes forward, pretending not to notice. That evening, as Sophia practiced for her jury, the door to her practice room swung open. Julian stood in the doorway looking irritated. "Your playing is distracting me," he said bluntly. "I'm in room 415 trying to prepare for my jury, and I can hear you stumbling through that Beethoven sonata from down the hall." Sophia's hands froze over the keys. "I've reserved this room until 9. "That doesn't mean you have to bang on the piano the entire time," Julian replied. "Some of us are preparing for actual careers, not just trying to pass our classes." Something in Sophia snapped. Weeks of his cutting remarks, his smug superiority, his casual cruelty, it all boiled over in that moment. "You know what, Julian? You're right. Your playing is technically perfect," she said, standing up from the bench, "but no one will remember it 5 minutes after you've finished." Julian's face flushed with anger. "What did you just say to me?" "You play every note exactly as written, with perfect timing and perfect dynamics," Sophia continued, her voice gaining strength. "But there's nothing of you in it. Nothing real. Nothing human." For a moment, Julian seemed genuinely stunned by her outburst. Then his expression hardened. "We'll see who Professor Hayes nominates for the Carnegie competition," he said coldly. "Playing with feeling won't matter if you're not even in the running." After he left, Sophia sat back down at the piano, her hands shaking. She had never spoken to anyone like that before. Part of her was horrified at her own boldness, but another part felt a strange relief at finally standing up for herself. The jury performances went as expected. Julian played flawlessly, receiving the highest praise from the faculty panel. Sophia played well but hit several wrong notes in her Bach prelude, earning mixed feedback. Professor Hayes noted her continued improvement, but emphasized the need for greater technical consistency. A week later, as students gathered for their regular master class, Professor Hayes handed out envelopes to 5 students, her nominations for the Carnegie Hall competition. Julian received one, as did 3 upper-class students known for their exceptional abilities. The 5th envelope went to Sophia. "This can't be right," Julian said loudly as Sophia stared at her name on the envelope in disbelief. "She's a first-year student." Professor Hayes fixed him with a stern look. "The competition committee requested diversity and experience levels. Mr. Reed, Ms. Chen's jury performance, while imperfect, showed significant potential." Julian laughed, a short, dismissive sound that cut through the room. "This is a joke. She'll embarrass the department." "That's quite enough," Professor Hayes said sharply. "All nominees have earned their place in this competition." The masterclass continued, but Sophia barely heard a word. She clutched the envelope, feeling both elated and terrified. A chance to play at Carnegie Hall seemed impossible, like something from a dream. But Julian's reaction had turned the moment sour, reminding her of the gulf between his world and hers. That night, Sophia sat alone in her dorm room, staring at the contents of the envelope. The competition would require her to prepare a full concerto, something she had never attempted. The very thought was overwhelming. She picked up her phone and called home for the first time in weeks. "Bah, it's me," she said when her father answered. "Sophia, your mother and I were just talking about you. How are classes?" She tried to sound cheerful. "Good, challenging but good. Are you eating enough? Your mother wants to know if you're eating." Sophia smiled despite herself. "Yes, Ba, I'm eating. And the piano? Are you still the best?" Her father had always believed she was the most talented pianist in the world, his pride untempered by reality. At that question, something inside Sophia crumbled. "No, Ba, I'm not the best. Not even close." Her voice broke as she continued. "There are people here who have been playing advanced repertoire since they were children. People with private tutors and expensive instruments. People who belong here. And you think you don't belong?" her father asked gently. "I was nominated for a big competition today," Sophia said, wiping away tears. "To play at Carnegie Hall, but it feels like a mistake. Like they'll realize it soon and take it back." "No mistake," her father said firmly. "If they chose you, they saw what your mother and I have always seen." "What's that?" "That when you play, people feel something. Your mother and I don't know much about classical music, but we know how your playing makes us feel. That is a gift no teacher can give." After hanging up, Sophia sat at her small desk and pulled out a blank notebook. She began to make a list of concertos she might possibly play for the competition, crossing out those that seemed too technically demanding. The list grew shorter and shorter until only a few options remained. As she was about to close the notebook, a knock came at her door. Expecting her roommate who had forgotten her key again, Sophia opened it to find Lily standing there with a concerned expression. "I heard what happened in masterclass," Lily said. "Are you okay?" Sophia shrugged. "I guess. I don't know if I should even go through with it." "What? Of course you should. Julian's right. I'll embarrass myself." Lily shook her head firmly. "No, Julian's scared. I've never seen him react like that to anyone else getting an opportunity." "Scared of what?" "He's Julian Reed. Scared that maybe, just maybe, technical perfection isn't everything." Lily looked at the open notebook on Sophia's desk. "What are you going to play?" "I have no idea. Something I can actually handle, I guess." "No," Lily said with sudden intensity. "Play something that shows who you are. Something that will make them feel what you feel when you play it." Sophia thought about her father's words about making people feel something. She thought about Julian's technically perfect but emotionally empty performances. "I need to practice," she said suddenly. "A lot." "The building's closed," Lily reminded her. "Tomorrow, then." "I'll start tomorrow." That night, Sophia couldn't sleep. She lay awake thinking about the competition, about Julian's mockery, about Carnegie Hall. Around 3 a.m. she made a decision. She would either withdraw from the competition tomorrow or commit completely to preparing for it. No middle ground. She packed a small bag with her essentials, enough for a weekend at home. If she was going to quit, she would tell her parents in person. They deserved that much. As dawn broke, Sophia quietly left her dorm room, letter of withdrawal already drafted in her notebook. But as she walked across the quiet campus, her steps led her not to the bus station, but to the music building. The security guard recognized her and let her in with a sleepy nod. In the empty practice room, Sophia placed her hands on the keys and began to play. Not scales or exercises or competition pieces, but a simple melody her grandmother had taught her years ago, a folk song from a village in China that her grandmother had left behind decades earlier. As the familiar notes filled the room, Sophia felt something shift inside her. This was why she played. Not for juries or competitions or Carnegie Hall, but for this feeling, this connection to something bigger than herself. She would stay. She would compete. And win or lose, she would play in a way that was true to herself. The winter holidays came and went in a flash. While other students went home to celebrate with their families, Sophia stayed at the nearly empty conservatory, using the quiet halls and available practice rooms to her advantage. Her parents had been disappointed but understood when she explained how important these uninterrupted practice hours were. Instead, they sent her homemade dumplings and a new scarf her mother had knitted, along with a card signed by everyone from their restaurant staff. Sophia had chosen Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 for the competition, a bold choice that had raised Professor Hayes's eyebrows. "That's an ambitious piece, Ms. Chen," she had said when Sophia submitted her selection. "The technical demands are considerable." "I know," Sophia had replied, surprising herself with her confidence. "But it speaks to me." Now, as January's bitter cold settled over the campus and students returned for the new semester, Sophia felt both more prepared and more terrified than ever. She could play through the concerto from memory, but inconsistently. Some days her fingers flew across the keys with surprising agility. Other days they seemed to tangle on even the simplest passages. "You look terrible," Lily said bluntly when they reunited at their usual cafe table. "Are you sleeping at all?" Sophia stirred her coffee, dark circles evident under her eyes. "A few hours here and there. That's not sustainable. You'll crash before the competition." "I just need more practice time," Sophia insisted. "Julian's been playing his concerto for years." "I've had weeks," Lily frowned. "Have you heard who else is competing? Besides Julian and me?" "Thomas Wong from the violin department, Isabel Navarro from cello, and Zoe Park from flute. All upperclassmen, all with impressive resumes." Sophia was by far the least experienced. "Quite the lineup," Lily said. "But you know what? None of them play like you do." Sophia gave her friend a skeptical look. "You mean none of them miss as many notes as I do?" "That's not what I meant, and you know it." Lily reached across the table and squeezed Sophia's hand. "When's the last time you played just for joy? Not for practice, not for the competition, just because you love music?" The question caught Sophia off guard. She couldn't remember. Every minute at the piano lately had been focused on the competition, on proving herself worthy of that Carnegie Hall stage. "That's what I thought." Lily said, reading her expression. You need a break. Just one evening away from Rachmaninoff before you forget why you play in the first place. That night, instead of staying late at the practice rooms, Sophia allowed Lily to drag her to a small jazz club in the city. The place was dimly lit and cramped, with mismatched chairs crowded around tiny tables. On a small stage, a trio, piano, bass, and drums, played with an easy freedom that made Sophia's classically trained mind both confused and fascinated. They're not playing what's written, she whispered, to Lily after their first set. Lily laughed. That's the point. It's improvisation. They're having a conversation with each other through their instruments. As the night progressed, Sophia found herself drawn into that conversation. The pianist, an older man with salt and pepper hair and hands that looked too large for the keyboard, played with a looseness that contrasted sharply with the rigid precision Westfield demanded. Yet there was something undeniably right about how he approached the piano, as if he and the instrument were old friends having a heart-to-heart. During a break, Lily went to get drinks. The pianist, seeing Sophia studying him, approached her table. You play? He asked simply, nodding toward her hands, which had been unconsciously tapping along with the rhythm on the table. Yes, Sophia admitted. Classical, though. Ah, he smiled. The serious stuff. What's your name? Sophia Chen. Masaru Tanaka, he replied, offering his hand. You're at the conservatory? She nodded, surprised. How did you know? The way you were watching my hands, counting my mistakes. His eyes crinkled with amusement. No, I wasn't, Sophia began, embarrassed. It's okay. I make plenty. He laughed, a warm sound that put her at ease. But tell me something, did you feel the music tonight? Very much, she said honestly. Then the notes don't matter so much, do they? Before she could answer, he was called back to the stage. As he walked away, he turned back briefly. Come by tomorrow if you want. I give lessons during the day. Nothing fancy? Just above the laundromat on Grove Street. When Lily returned, Sophia told her about the conversation. Masaru Tanaka? Lily's eyes widened. Sophia, do you have any idea who that is? A jazz pianist? He was one of the most promising classical pianists of his generation. He studied at Juilliard, won the International Chopin competition when he was 20, and then just disappeared from the classical world. There were rumors about a breakdown or something. Now he only plays jazz. Sophia looked back at the stage with newfound interest. He invited me to come for a lesson tomorrow. You should go, Lily said immediately. This could be exactly what you need. The next afternoon, Sophia found herself climbing a narrow staircase above a rumbling laundromat. At the top was a faded door with a simple handwritten sign, Piano Lessons, M. Tanaka. She knocked hesitantly. The door opened to reveal a small apartment dominated by a beautiful, if somewhat worn, Bösendorfer grand piano. Masaru stood in the doorway looking less glamorous in daylight, dressed in a simple button-up shirt and slacks. The conservatory student, he said with a smile. Come in. The apartment was cluttered but clean, with books and sheet music stacked on every surface. The walls were covered with framed concert programs and photographs, evidence of his former life. Sit, he gestured to the piano bench. Play something for me. Sophia sat down nervously. What would you like to hear? Whatever means something to you. Almost without thinking, Sophia began to play the folk melody her grandmother had taught her, the same one she had played on that early morning when she'd nearly left Westfield. It was simple, just a single melodic line with basic harmonies, but she poured her homesickness and determination into every note. When she finished, Masaru was silent for a long moment. That wasn't Chopin or Liszt, he finally said. No, it's a folk song my grandmother taught me, from her village in China. Play it again, he requested, but this time play just the first note. Only the first note, and make it the most important note you've ever played. Sophia looked at him quizzically but positioned her fingers over the keys. She played the first note, a G, letting it ring out. Again, Masaru said, but this time put everything you feel about that song into just that one note. Feeling slightly foolish, Sophia tried again, focusing on the note's tone, imagining her grandmother singing the melody. Again, Masaru insisted, one note that contains the entire piece. Sophia took a deep breath and played the G once more, this time allowing memories to flow through her, her grandmother's hands guiding hers on the keys. The smell of her father's restaurant where she had practiced for years. The taste of her mother's dumplings. The weight of her parents' hopes for her future. The note seemed to hang in the air, resonating with something beyond its simple sound. "There," Masaru said softly. "That's it. What's it?" "The soul's voice. The thing all the technique in the world can't teach." He sat in a chair across from the piano. "You're preparing for something important, aren't you?" "I can tell." Sophia nodded and told him about the Carnegie Hall competition, about Julian Reed and his perfect technique, about her fears of embarrassing herself on such a prestigious stage. Masaru listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said when she finished, "I was like your Julian once. Technical perfection was everything. I could play the most difficult pieces flawlessly. But one day, after a concert where I received a standing ovation, a very old man came backstage. He had been a student of Rachmaninoff himself. And do you know what he said to me?" Sophia shook her head. "He said, 'Young man, you played all the right notes, but you didn't play the right notes.' I was offended. I had played perfectly, but over time I came to understand what he meant." Masaru looked at the photos on his wall with a distant expression. "Technical perfection is empty without emotional truth." "That's what I've been trying to tell Julian," Sophia said. "But he doesn't listen. People like Julian don't listen. They have to feel it for themselves." Masaru turned back to her. "So make him feel it. How?" "The same way you just did with that one note. Find the emotional core of your music and put your entire self into every note you play, especially the first one." He smiled. "The first note sets the intention for everything that follows." For the next 3 hours, Sophia didn't touch Rachmaninoff. Instead, Masaru had her play simple scales and arpeggios, focusing on the quality of each individual note. He taught her to breathe with the music, to feel the weight of her body transferring into the keys, to listen not just with her ears but with her entire being. "This is nothing like what they teach at Westfield," Sophia said as their session came to an end. "Of course not. They're teaching you to be impressive. I'm teaching you to be expressive." Masaru closed the lid of the piano gently. "Come back tomorrow. We have work to do." Over the next 2 weeks, Sophia divided her time between Westfield's practice rooms and Masaru's apartment. At school, she worked diligently on the technical aspects of her Rachmaninoff concerto, drilling difficult passages until her fingers could navigate them reliably. With Masaru, she focused on something far more elusive, the ability to infuse each note with genuine emotion. "Again," Masaru would say, having her repeat a simple phrase or even a single note, 10, 20, 30 times until it contained exactly the feeling he was looking for. Music isn't about playing notes. It's about moving air in a way that moves souls. The competition drew closer. Julian and the other contestants could be heard practicing at all hours, their music spilling from practice rooms throughout the building. Julian, Sophia noticed, was playing Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1, a showstopper that would highlight his virtuosic technique. A week before the competition, Professor Hayes held a master class for the 5 nominees to perform sections of their chosen pieces. Julian went first, delivering a technically dazzling rendition of Tchaikovsky's famous opening. The room applauded enthusiastically. When it was Sophia's turn, she approached the piano with Masaru's words echoing in her mind. "The first note sets the intention." She placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and played the opening chords of Rachmaninoff, not with the thunderous power most pianists used, but with a deep, resonant weight that seemed to come from somewhere beyond her small frame. The familiar sounds suddenly seemed new, as if the audience were hearing them for the first time. Sophia played only the first few minutes of the concerto, but when she finished, there was a different quality to the silence that followed, a stillness that felt almost reverent before the applause began. As she returned to her seat, she caught Julian watching her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. It wasn't quite respect, but it was no longer pure dismissal either. It was something closer to uncertainty. "You've been working with someone," he said when they passed in the hallway later. It wasn't a question. "Does it matter?" Sophia replied. "It won't be enough," Julian said, but the usual edge was missing from his voice. "Technique always wins." Sophia smiled slightly. "We'll see." The morning of the competition arrived with a sky full of heavy gray clouds threatening snow. Sophia woke before her alarm, her stomach tight with nerves. She had barely slept, drifting in and out of anxious dreams where she walked onto the Carnegie Hall stage only to find the piano keys had turned to stone under her fingers. She dressed carefully in the one formal outfit she owned, a simple black dress her mother had insisted on buying her for special performances, paired with a red silk scarf that had belonged to her grandmother. As she pinned her hair up, her hands trembled slightly. "You look nice," her roommate said, watching from her bed. They weren't close, but there was genuine warmth in her voice today. "Good luck out there." "Thanks," Sophia replied, managing a small smile. The competition was to be held in Westfield's largest performance hall, with a panel of distinguished judges including the conductor of the National Symphony Orchestra, 2 faculty members from the conservatory, and a renowned music critic from New York. Each contestant would perform their concerto with piano accompaniment, as a full orchestra would only be available for the winner at Carnegie Hall. Sophia arrived early, hoping to find a quiet corner to gather her thoughts before the performances began. Instead, she found the backstage area already buzzing with activity. The other contestants were there along with their friends, teachers, and family members who had come to support them. Julian stood surrounded by a group that included his parents, his father in an expensive suit, his mother draped in elegant jewelry. Professor Hayes hovered nearby, speaking to them in low, serious tones. When Julian spotted Sophia, he gave her a curt nod, his expression unreadable. Nervous? It was Thomas Wong, the violinist, warming up his fingers with silent exercises. Terrified, Sophia admitted. Thomas laughed softly. Me too. 4 years at this place, and I still get shaky before big performances. He nodded toward Julian. Don't let him get to you. He's human like the rest of us, no matter how much he pretends otherwise. I'm not sure he knows that, Sophia said, watching as Julian graciously accepted good wishes from several faculty members. Oh, deep down he knows. That's why he works so hard to seem perfect. Thomas gave her an encouraging smile. Just play your heart out. That's all any of us can do. Sophia found a small practice room where she could warm up her fingers and center herself before the competition began. As she went through her usual exercises, she remembered Masaru's parting words from their final lesson yesterday. Don't try to impress them, he had said, hands resting lightly on her shoulders. Try to move them. There's a difference. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Lily holding a small bouquet of daisies. They're not fancy, Lily said, handing them to Sophia. But they reminded me of you. Bright and unpretentious, Sophia laughed, accepting the flowers. Thanks, I needed that. How are you feeling? Like I might throw up, Lily grinned. That's normal. Just remember, no matter what happens today, you've already won by getting this far. She glanced at her watch. They're seating people. I should go find my spot. After one last hug, Lily left. Sophia took a deep breath and headed toward the green room where the contestants were gathering. As she walked, her phone buzzed with a text message from her parents. We believe in you. Play with your heart. They had wanted to come but couldn't afford to close the restaurant for a full day. Sophia had assured them it was fine, that this was just a preliminary competition anyway. But now she wished they could be here to hold her hand and tell her everything would be okay. In the green room, Professor Hayes was reviewing the order of performances. Mr. Reed will perform first, followed by Ms. Navarro, Mr. Wong, Ms. Park, and finally, Ms. Chen. She looked at each of them in turn. You've all worked exceptionally hard to reach this point. Regardless of today's outcome, you represent the best of Westfield, and I expect you to conduct yourselves accordingly. Her gaze lingered on Julian a moment longer than the others, and Sophia wondered if she was imagining the warning in the professor's eyes. As they waited for the competition to begin, Sophia could hear the audience filing into the hall, their voices a distant murmur beyond the walls. She tried to quiet her racing thoughts by running through mental exercises Masaru had taught her, focusing on her breathing, feeling the weight of her body, connecting to the emotional core of her music. First performer, please prepare, a stagehand announced, and Julian stood, buttoning his suit jacket with steady hands. Good luck, Isabel Navarro, the cellist said to him. Julian gave a confident smile. Thanks, but I don't need luck. He glanced at Sophia. Some of us have been preparing for opportunities like this our entire lives. The barb stung, but Sophia kept her expression neutral. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her rattled, not today. As Julian walked toward the stage, Sophia slipped out of the green room to watch his performance from the wings. The hall was packed. Students, faculty, and visitors filled every seat. The judges sat in the front row, notepads ready, expressions serious. Julian walked onto the stage with the easy confidence of someone who had performed countless times before. He acknowledged the audience with a graceful bow, nodded to his accompanist, and took his place at the piano. For a brief moment he closed his eyes, centering himself. Then his hands came down on the keys, launching into the dramatic opening chords of Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1. Even Sophia, who had grown to resent Julian's arrogance, couldn't deny his brilliance. His technique was impeccable, every note perfectly placed, every dynamic shift precisely executed. His fingers flew across the keyboard during the difficult passages with seemingly effortless agility. It was like watching a master craftsman at work, each movement calculated for maximum effect. The audience sat transfixed. From her position in the wings, Sophia could see the judges nodding approvingly, making notes on their pads. She felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. How could she possibly compete with such perfection? When Julian reached the end of his performance, the audience erupted in thunderous applause. He stood, bowing deeply, his expression composed but pleased. As he exited the stage, he passed close to Sophia. "Good luck following that," he whispered, the ghost of a smirk on his lips. Sophia returned to the green room, trying to calm her racing heart. One by one, the other contestants performed. Isabel with her rich, emotional cello concerto, Thomas playing Sibelius with elegant precision, Zoe bringing delicate beauty to her flute concerto. Each performance was met with enthusiastic applause, though none quite matched the reception Julian had received. And then it was Sophia's turn. "Final performer, please prepare," the stagehand announced. The other contestants offered encouragement as she stood. "Just breathe," Thomas said kindly. "You'll be wonderful," Isabel added. Sophia nodded gratefully and made her way to the stage entrance. Her legs felt wobbly, her mouth dry. From the wings, she could see her accompanist already seated at the second piano, waiting for her. Beyond, the audience seemed an indistinct mass, faces blurred by the stage lights. "And now our final performer," the announcer's voice rang out. "First-year piano student Sophia Chen, performing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 in C minor." A polite smattering of applause followed as Sophia walked onto the stage. She felt exposed, vulnerable under the bright lights. Making her way to the piano, she caught sight of Lily in the audience, giving her a thumbs up. A few rows back, to her surprise, sat Masaru Tanaka, looking oddly formal in a suit that seemed too big for his frame. Sophia sat at the piano bench, adjusting it slightly. She placed her hands in her lap, taking a moment to gather herself. The hall fell silent, waiting. In that moment of quiet, a strange calm settled over her. She remembered all the hours of practice, all the mornings and nights at the keyboard. She thought of her parents working long hours at their restaurant to pay for her early lessons. She thought of her grandmother teaching her that first folk melody, guiding her small fingers over the keys. She thought of Julian's mockery and Masaru's wisdom. The first note sets the intention. Sophia lifted her hands and placed them over the keys. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and rather than beginning immediately as expected, she sat in perfect stillness for nearly a full minute. In the audience, people began to shift uncomfortably. One of the judges leaned forward with a concerned expression. Julian, watching from the side of the hall, smirked slightly, assuming she had frozen. But Sophia wasn't frozen. She was finding her center, connecting to the emotional truth of the music she was about to play, just as Masaru had taught her. When she finally brought her hands down for the opening chord, it was with absolute conviction. A single perfectly resonant note emerged from the piano, not loud but somehow filling the entire hall with its presence. It seemed to hang in the air indefinitely, containing within it both profound sorrow and transcendent hope. The accompanist, caught off guard by the unexpected intensity of that first note, almost missed his entrance, but quickly recovered to join her as the music unfolded. Sophia played with a quality that was difficult to define. Her technique was not as polished as Julian's. There were moments when her fingers struggled with Rachmaninoff's demanding passages, small imperfections that a trained ear could detect. But there was something else in her playing, something that reached beyond technique and touched something deeper. Each phrase told a story. Each note carried meaning. The music flowed through her not as a display of skill, but as a genuine expression of human experience, longing, struggle, hope, triumph. In the audience, people leaned forward in their seats, drawn in by something they couldn't quite name. The judges set down their pens, their critical analysis temporarily forgotten as they simply listened. Julian, who had planned to leave after watching the beginning of her performance, found himself unable to move, his eyes fixed on Sophia's hands as they moved across the keyboard with passionate intensity. As she reached the concerto's famous second movement, with its achingly beautiful melody, Sophia felt herself disappear into the music completely. She was no longer performing for judges or audience or Julian. She was simply allowing the music to speak through her, as purely and honestly as she could. When the final notes of the concerto rang out, there was a moment of complete silence in the hall. That silence, the absence of immediate applause, might have devastated another performer. But Sophia understood it for what it was, the lingering resonance of something genuine. Then the applause began, hesitant at first, then building to a sound that filled the hall. People rose to their feet, some wiping tears from their eyes, others simply shaking their heads in wonder. As Sophia stood to acknowledge the applause, her eyes found Julian in the audience. He wasn't clapping. He was simply staring at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. A mixture of confusion, realization, and something that looked almost like envy. Sophia bowed once more and left the stage, her heart pounding not with anxiety now, but with the pure joy of having given everything she had to give. In the wings, Masaru was waiting for her. "You played one note," he said quietly, "and everything changed." "Did I do enough?" Sophia asked, suddenly remembering that this had been a competition, not just a personal journey. Masaru smiled. "That's the wrong question. The right question is, did you move them?" Looking back at the still applauding audience, Sophia knew the answer. After the performances, the contestants and audience gathered in the conservatory's grand lobby for refreshments while the judges deliberated. Sophia stood near a window, watching snow begin to fall outside, still feeling the lingering energy of her performance. Friends and fellow students approached her one after another, offering congratulations and praise. Even Professor Hayes had given her a brief nod of approval before joining the judges in their private discussion. That was... Lily appeared at her side, seemingly at a loss for words. "I don't even know how to describe what you did out there. Was it okay?" Sophia asked, suddenly uncertain now that the moment had passed. "Okay?" Lily laughed. "Sophia, people were crying. I've never seen anything like it at Westfield, ever." Across the room, Julian stood with his parents in a circle of admirers. Though he smiled and nodded at their compliments, his eyes kept drifting toward Sophia. Eventually, he excused himself and made his way through the crowd to where she stood. Lily tensed. "Want me to stay?" "It's fine," Sophia assured her. "I'll be okay." As Lily reluctantly stepped away, Julian approached, his expression unreadable. "Interesting performance," he said after an awkward pause. "Thank you," Sophia replied simply. "Your technique still needs work." He glanced down at his perfectly manicured hands. The cadenza in the third movement was sloppy. Sophia waited, sensing there was more he wanted to say. Julian looked up, meeting her eyes directly for perhaps the first time. "But you made people feel something I couldn't." The admission seemed physically painful for him. "How did you do that?" Before Sophia could answer, Julian's father appeared at his side, placing a hand firmly on his shoulder. "There you are," he said, barely acknowledging Sophia. "The director of the Boston Symphony is here. Come say hello." He steered Julian away, leaving Sophia's question unanswered. Masaru approached next, looking out of place among the conservatory crowd in his worn suit. "You found your voice today," he said quietly. "I don't think I would have without your help," Sophia replied. "No," Masaru shook his head. "I didn't give you anything you didn't already have. I just helped you remember why you play." He nodded toward Julian, now engaged in conversation with an important-looking group across the room. "He plays to impress. You play to express. That's the difference." A hush fell over the lobby as the judges returned. The director of the conservatory stepped forward, holding an envelope. "Before I announce the results," he began, I want to thank all 5 of our remarkable performers today. The level of talent displayed this afternoon has been truly extraordinary. Sophia felt her heart pounding as the director continued with formalities, thanking the judges and the benefactor who had made the Carnegie Hall opportunity possible. The judge's decision was not an easy one, he said, opening the envelope slowly. Each performer brought unique strengths to their interpretation. Sophia closed her eyes, suddenly not wanting to hear the result. No matter what happened, she had played with complete honesty today. That was its own victory. The winner of the Westfield Conservatory Carnegie Hall competition, the director announced, and the student who will perform with the National Symphony Orchestra this spring is... The pause seemed to stretch forever. Sophia Chen. For a moment, Sophia was certain she had misheard. She opened her eyes to find everyone looking at her. Lily was jumping up and down, mouth open in a silent scream of joy. Masaru was smiling broadly. Even Thomas and Isabel, her fellow competitors, were applauding with genuine enthusiasm. Sophia Chen, the director repeated, please come forward. On legs that felt disconnected from her body, Sophia made her way through the crowd. Hands reached out to pat her shoulder, squeeze her arm, offer congratulations. It felt like walking through a dream. At the front of the room, the director presented her with a certificate and shook her hand while photographers captured the moment. The head judge, the conductor of the National Symphony, stepped forward to speak with her. Your performance today showed remarkable emotional depth, Ms. Chen, he said. We look forward to working with you on the Rachmaninoff for the Carnegie program. It was real. She had won. As the formal presentation concluded and people began to disperse, Sophia found herself face to face with Julian and his parents. His mother offered a tight smile and murmured congratulations before turning away. His father simply nodded curtly. Julian himself stood there for a long moment, conflict evident in his expression. Finally, he extended his hand. Congratulations, he said, the word clearly difficult for him. Sophia shook his hand. Thank you. I still don't understand it, he added in a lower voice. I played better than you. I know I did. Maybe playing better isn't the same as playing right, Sophia suggested gently, remembering Masaru's story about the old man backstage. Julian's brow furrowed, but before he could respond, his father called him away. With one last puzzled glance at Sophia, he turned and left. The weeks that followed passed in a blur for Sophia. News of her win spread quickly through the conservatory, changing her status overnight from overlooked scholarship student to celebrated performer. Suddenly, other students wanted to practice with her. Professors who had barely noticed her now stopped to chat in the hallways, and her inbox filled with congratulatory messages from people she hardly knew. Through it all, Sophia continued her lessons with Masaru, working now on refining her interpretation of the Rachmaninoff for the Carnegie Hall performance. She also made a point of calling her parents every evening, sharing the details of her day and listening to their unabashed pride. We're coming to New York for your concert, her father announced one night. The whole staff insists on covering the restaurant. Nothing could keep us away. 3 weeks after the competition, Sophia was leaving a practice room late one evening when she spotted Julian alone in one of the small recital halls. Curious, she paused in the darkened doorway, watching as he sat at the piano, staring at the keys. He began to play, not Tchaikovsky or any of the technically demanding pieces he was known for, but a simple Bach prelude. He played it once through perfectly, then again and again, each time with subtle differences in phrasing and dynamics, as if searching for something. After his 4th attempt, he stopped abruptly and ran his hands through his usually immaculate hair in frustration. What am I missing? He muttered to himself. Sophia stepped back quietly, not wanting to intrude on what seemed like a private struggle. As she turned to leave, she bumped into Professor Hayes, who had also been observing Julian unnoticed. He's been doing that every night since the competition, Professor Hayes said softly, as they moved away from the door. Playing the same pieces over and over, trying to find what you have. I didn't mean to spy, Sophia apologized. Sometimes we learn as much from our losses as our victories, the professor replied. Julian needed this lesson, though he doesn't fully understand it yet. Will he? Sophia asked. Professor Hayes smiled slightly. That depends on him. Technical skill can be taught, but the willingness to be vulnerable, to put one's true self into the music. That's a choice each musician must make for themselves. She gave Sophia an appraising look. You've changed since you arrived here, Ms. Chen. Not just as a pianist, but as a person. I've learned a lot, Sophia acknowledged. Yes, but not all of it in our classrooms, I think. The professor glanced back toward the recital hall where Julian continued his solitary practice. Your friend Mr. Tanaka is an interesting teacher. Sophia's eyes widened in surprise. You know about my lessons with him? This is a small musical community, Ms. Chen. Very little remains secret for long. Professor Hayes straightened her always perfect posture. He was brilliant once before he walked away from classical music. Perhaps you've helped him as much as he's helped you. The spring thaw had come by the time Sophia traveled to New York for her Carnegie Hall debut. Her parents arrived the day before, her mother fussing over her hair and outfit, her father beaming with pride at everything and everyone. Lily came too, along with several other Westfield students who had become friends in the months since the competition. Most surprising was Julian's appearance at the final rehearsal with the orchestra. He sat quietly in the back of the hall, watching as Sophia worked with the conductor on tempos and cues. After rehearsal, he approached her cautiously. Do you have a minute? They walked together to a small courtyard outside the hall. I wanted to say, Julian began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. I wanted to say I was wrong about you. Sophia waited, giving him time. I've been studying with Tanaka, he continued. Since February. He's not what I expected. No, Sophia agreed with a small smile. He's not. He talks about you a lot. Says you reminded him why music matters. Julian looked down at his hands. I've been playing piano since I was 3 years old. My whole life has been about being the best, being perfect. And then you came along and showed everyone that perfect isn't enough. That wasn't my intention, Sophia said gently. I know. That's part of what makes it so... He gestured vaguely. Real, I guess. He met her eyes. I'm still going to work harder than anyone else. I'm still going to aim for technical perfection. But I'm trying to find what you have too. I think you will, Sophia said, and meant it. The next evening, as Sophia stood in the wings of Carnegie Hall waiting to make her entrance, she thought about the journey that had brought her here, from the small back room of her parents' restaurant to this historic stage, from Julian's mockery to his reluctant respect, from self-doubt to self-discovery. She could see her parents in the front row, dressed in their finest clothes, her mother already dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Lily sat beside them, giving Sophia a discreet thumbs up when their eyes met. In the back of the hall stood Masaru, nodding encouragement. The conductor turned to the wings and gestured for her to enter. As Sophia walked onto the Carnegie Hall stage, the applause washing over her, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for every moment of the journey, the painful ones as well as the joyful. She sat at the piano, adjusted the bench and placed her hands in her lap. The hall grew quiet. The conductor raised his baton, waiting for her cue. Sophia took a deep breath, found her center, and placed her hands over the keys. She thought of her grandmother's folk song, her parents' sacrifice, Masaru's wisdom, Julian's challenge, and her own growth. Then she played the first note, putting everything she had learned, everything she had become into that single, perfect sound, and once again silence took over.